Weapons, the brand new horror movie. In this video we will be diving straight into its deeper themes and symbolism. There will be spoilers. Let us begin. The film has a fairy tale quality. When you consider the overall story, we have a young boy called Alex living under the tyranny of his evil witch aunt. And like many fairy tales, this evil witch is parasitic. She feeds off the life force of Alex's loved ones. First his parents, then his 17 classmates. We learn that she is sick, perhaps a sickness introduced by her own union with the demonic. And so in order to keep herself alive, she has to feed parasitically off other people. That's why she summons those 17 kids. She owns a bell engraved with a number 6 and a small triangle. And she also owns a kind of bonsai tree, presumably imbued with dark magic. It looks to me like a holly tree, but some have suggested it might be a blackthorn. Well, let's start with the bell. What does the number 6 represent? Well, this movie is told from the perspective of 6 different characters: Justine, Archer, Paul, James, Marcus, and Alex. And they all come to be affected by the witch's curse in some way. But going deeper, in the Bible, the number 6 is associated with humanity. Adam, the first human, was made on the 6th day of creation. 6 falls just short of 7, the number associated with God's completion, and indeed we read that God rested on the 7th day of creation. When Adam and Eve snatched from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, they formed an alliance with the serpent, and this perverse union is reflected in Revelation 13. We're jumping between the very beginning and the very end of the Bible. There's this kind of unholy trinity formed by the dragon, the beast of the sea, and the beast of the earth. And look at verse 18. This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. That number is 666. So 666 is the number of this unholy trinity. If 7 represents completion, 666 is a threefold falling short of that. So Adamic humanity was created on the 6th day, and it was initially good, but it became corrupted and compromised as it formed an alliance with the beast. And that's what 666 represents. So the triangle next to the number 6 on the bell in the film, that gets us thinking about 3 6s, the number of the beast, an appropriate number for an evil witch to invoke. But triangles appear elsewhere in the movie. In the opening title, there's a triangle inside the O, and this resembles the Alcoholics Anonymous logo. But the triangle on the bell is upside down. Alcoholics Anonymous is about breaking free from a particular slavery, whereas the bell is a form of enslavement. It does the opposite. And this is all very deliberate. It's a film about humanity. And in particular, it focuses on our addictions, things that enslave us, and the resulting impact on our children. Justine, the teacher, turns to alcohol to try and numb her pain. James is a drug addict. Paul, the cop, is unfaithful to his wife. So the film has a really nuanced portrayal of human sin. On the one hand, its setting, the town of Maybrook in Pennsylvania, is living in the shadow of the witch's curse. There is a supernatural evil presence bearing down on these people. There is immense grief in the wake of the 17 children going missing, and all that has an effect, but at the same time, these adults are culpable for their actions. And so the witch's presence is amplifying and drawing out tendencies and temptations that already exist within this town. And that's a really powerful picture of what addiction is like. Whatever our particular besetting sins, we are responsible for them, and we are enslaved by them. And in this film, as in real life, children are caught up in the collateral damage. So there's a lot going on with that bell. It represents humanity's enslavement to the forces of evil. And whenever the witch rings the bell, people are summoned to do her bidding. The key instance of this is, of course, when she rings the bell at 2:17 a.m. to summon the 17 kids. Now, why is it 2:17? Well, the 17 clearly refers to Alex's classmates. The 2 could refer to the 2 who are left behind in class, Alex and his teacher Justine, or it could refer to Alex's parents. In any case, the 217 appears again on the side of the giant assault rifle hovering over the house in Archer's dream. I guess that's because at 2:17 a.m. the children became weapons in the witch's hands. What about the strange way that people run whilst under the witch's control? Here's what the film's director, Zach Cregger, has to say about that. There's that terrible photo of that girl in Vietnam with the napalm burn. I think that image is so awful, and the way she's holding her arms out just killed me. I think there's something really upsetting about that posture. If I had to guess, that might be where the seed is from. I don't know. But there was no second guessing that pose. I knew that they would run that way. Now, trees are very important symbolically. In Genesis, as we've seen, Adam and Eve snatched from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, forming an alliance with the serpent, and that brings pain and frustration to life on earth. And thorns are one particular manifestation of that. To Adam, God says, "Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil, you will eat food from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field." But it goes deeper, because in the biblical narrative, the curse is ultimately defeated by Jesus. He comes as the second Adam, fully God and fully human, and he goes to his tree, the cross, wearing a crown of thorns. So that's very profound. The thorns that came into the world as a curse under the first Adam are raised up as a crown on the head of the second Adam. So through the shedding of Jesus' blood under his thorns, people are set free from curse. But in weapons, the witch's methods are an inversion of that, a perverse one. When she uses her thorns to shed her blood, she enslaves people to her curse. And what I found especially scary about the film is its domestic setting. This is not a witch stirring a cauldron in the middle of nowhere. This is a lady using a glass mixing bowl on someone's kitchen worktop. Supernatural evil being unleashed from within the confines of a modern home. We might feel safe and comfortable in our suburbs, shielded from the wild, but sometimes the most egregious evils are hidden in plain sight. Evil is self-destructive. It undermines itself because it never gives, it can only take. And this is ultimately realised in the climax of the film. Alex grabs a twig wrapped with samples from the 17 kids and a sample from the witch's wig, and he coats it with his blood. He snaps the twig, and this unleashes the 17 kids on the witch. They pursue her and quite literally rip her apart. It's a pretty grisly moment. Now, on the one hand, this is uncomfortable because Alex is effectively casting one of the witch's spells. And so, is he effectively repaying evil for evil? Well, this is one of the complex things about the theology of horror films because, to quote a podcast I listen to a lot called Popcorn Theology, basically every story contains ideas that we'd want to reject, ideas that we can receive, and ideas that we can redeem. The casting of an occultic spell would never, under any circumstances, be the right, good thing to do in the real world. But when you take this story on its own terms, when you consider its lore and the logic of its narrative, you can see this moment as Alex turning the witch's power against itself. Because at the end of the day, this witch needs to be defeated. In the film, she is an embodiment of evil. And it's actually fitting that her demise comes about through the shedding of innocent blood, the blood of Alex. This might be entirely unintentional on the part of the filmmakers, but Alex becomes a kind of mini, imperfect, Christ-like saviour figure in the context of the story, because through the shedding of his blood, the witch is killed and the curse is broken. This whole time, the witch thought that she was in control, and there's a wonderful moment when Alex snaps the twig. The witch looks up and says, "Oh no." She realises that all along she has actually been sowing the seeds for her own destruction. Evil, ultimately, is self-destructive. This fairy tale quality of the film is enhanced by the narration at the beginning and end, spoken by a young girl, presumably one of the 17.
At 2:17 in the morning, every kid woke up, got out of bed, walked downstairs, and into the dark.
And she tells us that after enduring that aunt from hell, Alex goes on to live with a good aunt, But it's bittersweet because his parents are institutionalized. It seems that the witch's influence on them has left deep scars. And the same goes for the 17 children. We learn that gradually they are beginning to speak again, but it will take time. A moving reminder that even though the main threat has been defeated, the characters still have to contend with a broken world. They have scars. And whatever you make of the Jesus story, the followers of Jesus, though their ultimate enemy has been defeated by Christ, as we await the return of Jesus, we are still contending with a broken world. So there we go, Weapons, one of the scariest films I've seen in the cinema for a while. And I think it's a very thought-provoking movie. Thanks so much for watching. You might be interested in a feature-length, zero-budget alien invasion film I made called Musical Statues. It's rough around the edges, but I tried to incorporate some of the deeper themes I talk about on this channel. You can watch it here for free. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I also composed the soundtrack for it, so if you'd like to listen on Spotify or wherever you get your music, I'll put links in the description below. This video was brought to you by my wonderful patrons. Thanks so much, guys.